In this video, I'll be going over why Radiant Virtue is the best mythic item for Maokai support. It is my most recommended first item for Maokai support as it provides an extremely large health pool which scales well with his abilities. It's a great item to buy, especially when you are the only tank option for your team and or you anticipate long and drawn out teamfights based on both teams' compositions. But of course, for every rule, there are exceptions, so you'll have to stick to the end of the video to know when to build the other viable mythic items in niche scenarios. As a quick review, Radiant Virtue is a mythic item that provides 10 ability haste, 30 armor, 30 magic resist, and 350 health. Upon casting your ultimate, you will activate Guiding Light, causing you to become transcended, where you gain an increased maximum health pool of 12.5% for 9 seconds. Over this time period, you will also be healing your teammates for 2.5% of your maximum health for a total of 4 times. You can see my champion model here pulsing from Radiant Virtue. 1, 2, 3, 4. This area of effect is actually quite large, and you are essentially providing a mini redemption for your nearby allies. You also have to remember you are acting as a huge meat shield for your team, which inadvertently will force the enemy to waste their DPS on you. The cooldown for Radiant Virtue's passive also aligns well with the cooldown for Maokai's ultimate at 90 seconds. This means you will most likely be able to gain full value of this item every time you cast Nature's Grasp. At this point though, you may be wondering, what does 12.5% maximum health really mean? Or 2.5% healing 4 times? Can I have some actual numbers? Well, lucky for you, I did the math. In the upcoming practice tool, I'll present 3 game states in the context of Maokai support with Radiant Virtue, which estimates how much total health you'll have in teamfights at the 20-minute, 24-minute, and 28-minute mark of a typical solo queue game. Gold income at different elos will vary, so you can also estimate the game state and your champion strength based on the number of items you have in each scenario. In game state 1, even at just 1.5 items or at around 20 minutes, we can see here that your total health is quite high while transcended. These numbers are all taken with a support gold income in mind, and it would be difficult to find such a gold efficient support build when it comes to optimizing maximum health. In teamfights, you will likely be activating sap magic 2 to 3 times, which equates to an additional 170 HP of healing for each proc, similar to having a free ruby crystal. Those single target AD carries will have a difficult time cutting through your enormous health pool at this early stage of the game, while your team is easily trading damage back. In game state 2, at around 2 items or at 24 minutes, with the addition of a completed Knight's Vow, your total health pool will be over 3000 HP. There have been countless games where a so-called tanky top laner is unable to reach this health value despite having a full lane of minions to farm for 25 minutes. As a support, you can provide this substantial health pool while protecting your most worthy ally with only Radiant Virtue and Knight's Vow. Finally, in game state 3, a more typical full build on Maokai support will include a Ward Stone which boosts your total bonus health an additional 8%. When stacking this with Radiant Virtue's passive, your total maximum health pool will be over 3700 HP. Only a few champions in League can ever reach this gigantic of a health pool at level 13. You essentially have become 2 champions worth of health, and it can be nearly impossible for an enemy team to deal with your massive HP. Your sap magic passive value at this point of the game is nearly 350 HP. That's essentially a free giant belt worth of stats every time you proc your passive. As a bonus note, Maokai's Sapling Toss, his E ability, also scales quite well with bonus health. With Radiant Virtue active, his saplings will do more damage, which can potentially give you that slight edge to winning a teamfight. Building additional health on Maokai also enhances his sapling's slow effectiveness, and they remain longer on the map when placed in bushes. Additional vision coverage in key bushes will help your team secure important objectives significantly easier. In general, Radiant Virtue is the premier mythic support item for Maokai since it allows him to be as tanky as possible, where the additional health scales well with sap magic passive and sapling toss ability. But if you've made it this far into the video, you're probably thinking, are there really no other possible mythic items for Maokai support? Well, Radiant Virtue is my favorite item for Maokai support, but there are always exceptions. Let's go over some niche situations where other mythic items are viable for this champion too. A common mythic item that is often quoted as a must-buy for Maokai support is Even Shroud. With the recent nerf of Even Shroud in patch 13.17, from 10% to 7% damage buff for your teammates upon immobilization, I can confidently say that Radiant Virtue is still your clear winner. However, there is one scenario that I would still buy this item, and that is if your team has 2 assassins. Radiant Virtue's strength often relies on your team being grouped together, gaining the most value from the healing upon cast. It's meant to be used in front-to-back teamfights where there are tanks and damage dealers relatively nearby, and when teamfights last quite long, at least 9 seconds. In team compositions where you have 2 assassins on your team, they will be instead more likely looking to fight in small skirmishes from unique angles. Therefore, if no one is going to be teamfighting around you, why would I buy Radiant Virtue to only heal myself? Instead, Even Shroud provides your glass cannon assassins to deal even further damage quickly and burst the enemy backline if caught in your nature's grasp. Additionally, Even Shroud can also provide a decent enough damage boost for your nearby ADC while your assassins are dealing damage from far away. The next niche item I would consider buying is Locket of the Iron Solari. This is a specific mythic item I would buy versus AoE heavy champions such as Katarina, Karthus, Samira, or Evelynn. If you are worried about burst damage from these types of champions, the additional armor and magic resist for nearby allies is extremely important and can help keep your allies from being bursted from 100 to 0. Purchasing this item means that your job in these types of games will be primarily disengaging and peeling from these enemy assassins or preventing heavy burst AoE damage. Generally, Radiant Virtue does have a higher value of a mythic item against single target damage dealers, but making sure your carry doesn't get bursted from AoE can be more important than having good sustained teamfighting value. The next item I want to discuss is not actually a mythic item, but it is still often bought as a first pick item where many item guides will tell you to follow the following build path. Swifties, Deadman's Plate, Even Shroud. This item path is very strong and can help snowball your game to victory very quickly, but in my opinion, it is actually more difficult to execute than your standard Radiant Virtue first item build path. Building Deadman's Plate first often means you will need to roam heavily and gain an early lead by acting as a secondary jungler. The general idea is that you want to abuse your movement speed such that it is extremely difficult to run away from you while being very tanky against AD damage. By running around the map as a secondary jungler, you can theoretically tilt all 3 lanes in the early game such that the enemy is tilted to a point of no recovery. Buying a Deadman's Plate first is a more carry-oriented support build since your gold will be used to buff yourself early on rather than your typical Radiant Virtue build to buff your teammates. Lastly, I want to introduce a very niche mythic item that I would only build in very specific scenarios, Shurelya's Battle Song. To be honest, this item probably requires some more solo queue testing, but let me try to break down my build theory here. Shurelya's Battle Song is usually a great item to build for enchanter supports who require additional movement speed to bolster their team's engage potential. Usually on Maokai support, your engage potential is already a great strength of yours, unless you're against a team composition with several long-range artillery type of units such as Lux, Caitlyn, or Xerath. Now, if it turns out your team's only win condition requires you to hard dive into the enemy team, Shurelya's Battle Song would give you that additional movement speed required to engage. The enemy team will no longer be able to poke you from 2 screens away if you're stampeding towards them at lightning speed. Additionally, what's great about this item is that its passive Motivate, which provides movement speed to teammates upon healing, can actually be procced with your rune, Font of Life. The trade-off with this item is that you will be a bit squishier as a tank support, but sometimes the win condition is to simply catch these extremely far away enemies and force favorable teamfights rather than being constantly poked out. Alright, thanks for watching this League of Legends guide on the best mythic items for Maokai support. If you like this content, make sure to hit that like button. I'll also be releasing additional content around Maokai support, so consider hitting that subscribe button too. It really does help. If you have any thoughts regarding Maokai support, please let me know in the comments below.